Alright, I'm even more sure that the event is going to be coming out on the 3rd because that's when they're going to be dropping the video talking about the event, and I assume it's going to be one of those things of, when is the event going live? It's going live in 2 hours, or however long the video actually runs, and then the daily reset actually occurs, but you guys get what I'm saying. So with that being said, I get to talk about one of my more favorite servants to use in Bakin. Now, unfortunately, I can't in good conscience tell people that even though I really like this servant, to go summon for them. If you're a dolphin, if you're a whale, you know, something along those lines, you actually spend money on the game, then, you know, you do you, pop off. But unless you really, really like this servant, you know, maybe a user out during the event, maybe you really like her story and all that good stuff, I would tell you to probably still save at least for summer, if not also for anniversary. Because I think she's a really good unit, I think she's very, very fun to use, but it's not like she's game-breakingly broken. You know, she is an AoE arts writer. We have a free-to-play option in that with Habitrot, who is very, very strong, and we have another limited servant that I think does a better job at being an AoE arts writer in DaVinci Writer herself. So I think there are better options, not only for the people that have Saint Quartz to summon, and also for the free-to-play players. So I can in good conscience say, go summon for this unit. But regardless, I'm still going to talk about why this servant is so good in today's video, because they are just really fun to use. They just have all the basic necessities, plus more, that I would like a really good AoE servant to have. In fact, the only thing that I didn't like about this servant when she released is that she was AoE instead of single target. She would be an absolute insane force if she was single target. You could bring her either as a 90 plus or plus plus finisher, but more importantly going into CQs and AQs and stuff, because she has so many good pieces. She is such a strong servant that it makes me sad that they made her AoE, but she's still good at that, alright? I still use her even at taking out bosses because she's just that good. So with that being said, if you enjoy being up to date on all things FGO related, both NA and JP, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as it helps me out more than you know. And with that being said, let's start diving into her kit, starting off with her hits. Now, if you look at her hits, you know, you're not going to be convinced that she's a broken servant, or I don't even want to say that she is a broken servant, but a really good servant nonetheless, because her hits are very average, except for that absolutely massive 6-hit extra attack, which is even better than the staple 5-hit extra attack. And if you're out of the loop, the extra attack is a composite card that gen stars NP and does big boy damage. And you guys know that's kind of my whole thing. Look, you can have people that like quick, arts, buster. Where is my extra attack servant, man? I guess technically that could be Alka or maybe Olga if she finally releases and whenever they want to drop her. But until then, I'm still waiting for my extra attack servant. But if you look at her other hits, her star gen and her NP gen are really nothing to write home about, especially with 3 hits on both of the quick cards and both of the arts cards. You know, it's nothing super special. In fact, you might say it feels a little bit underwhelming when using her, and even her own NP only has 4 hits on it, and usually AoE art servants will get a bit higher of an NP hit if their natural NP gain is lower, or vice versa, you know, in a way to kind of balance it out. She can still loop just fine, and because you're going to be using her against casters, probably because she is a writer, she'll get that extra NP gain boost, as casters give you the most NP refund back. So really it does work out, even though it might look bad on paper. In a practical use case, it shouldn't feel that bad if you're using her against type advantage opponents. Now, if you're bringing her as a type neutral unit, especially at NP1, you know, maybe she's not like NP2 or 3 for you, she can feel like her damage might be a little bit lower, but we'll talk about that more as we start getting into her kit, because she at least does have multiple different ways to buff up her damage. Her base damage might not look that insane, but she does have ways to beef herself up, and also some pretty decent power mods. So starting off with her first skill though, this is kind of just a nice utility skill for her to have, because it's a 30% battery for herself, and then the other 2 party members get a 10% battery, as well as bombing 15 stars, or I guess drizzling 15 stars. I guess bombing would be like 30 and above. And all this on a 6-turn cooldown. I really love when your DPS units actually do something that is useful for your supports. You know, you have a charisma on, say, a unit, and You could say, well, if you're bringing them with another DPS, it helps them out by giving them more damage, but realistically, if you're using 2 supports and your 1 DPS like 95% of the player base, those attack buffs really don't do anything for Castoria, Merlin, all these other people that you're going to be bringing. But charging their NP, that's really useful, especially considering who the art supports are. Castoria's NP is very strong, Tamamu's is good, Proto Merlin, who's coming out, is very strong, and even some of the more OG supports in people like Waver or Reigns also have super useful NPs. I mean, even if you're bringing Mash for extra defensive utility, her NP can be very nice. And so being able to assist them a little bit in getting to their NP so they can further support your DPS is one of the things that I really like to see servants like this have, because it's actually something useful that they can take advantage of. As well as also just being nice that it gives her a 30% battery, which is solid, and then having the 15 stars, so maybe she could do the offhanded crit every now and then, which will actually get more bite whenever Proto Merlin drops over here in a couple of months or whatever, when Summer goes ahead and drops over here on the NA side of things, or I guess now if you're going to use Waver alongside her. So the first skill I think is very solid. The second skill is just a whole smorgasbord of pretty nice effects, frankly, because it's just a bunch of stuff. She can target somebody and give them an Omni card buff, that is a quick arts and buster buff of 20% for 3 turns, plus a 20% crit damage for 3 turns, plus a 20% NP damage buff for 3 turns, plus it gives them a 1k heal, and it gives them 1 evasion that lasts for 3 turns, and it gives them 1 instance of debuff immunity for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown, which all of this on a 6-turn cooldown, you would think this would be like an 8 or 7-turn cooldown or something along those lines. But it's one of those skills that is actually aging really well, because for one, yeah, you could pretty much just give this to Bakin herself, and you know, she'll become really strong for the 3 turns while this is up, getting some extra NP damage, getting some of that arts buff for the NP. She could do some crits to use these stars that she drops on the first skill and on her NP, you know, protecting herself from getting, you know, just random debuffs. Even though Castoria can probably protect her from that, maybe you don't have her NP up, you just have that extra little bit of insulation on there. It's just kind of nice, you know, extra survivability. But with the release of Yui earlier this year for the Samurai Remnant collaboration, this is even better, because you could start to do some really goofy setups that probably aren't the best thing you could be doing, but it is rather funny that Yui can now have her NP turned on by anybody if you want to use somebody like Bakin. And it's technically not even that bad, because you could donate this buff to somebody else, and then she's also further charging their NP gauge by only 10%, but it's still nice. And then she's kind of genning stars for them with the first skill and the NP. So it's not even that bad of an idea. I mean, there's definitely better things you can be doing, but it is kind of nice how this skill did age, well, rather nicely. But obviously, for the meantime, you're either going to pass this off to somebody else if you're doing, say, a multi-core type setup, or you're bringing a single target and an AoE to a boss fight, maybe something along those lines. You think Bakin's going to go down, she could donate this to that guy, and then give them a little bit of an extra boost before she goes down. It's just kind of nice to use right now. And then her third skill, if you thought the arts buff was a little low, you're like 20%, that's definitely not enough. This gives her a further 30% arts performance buff on a 6-turn cooldown that lasts for 3 turns. So yes, she does just have a free arts mana burst for 3 turns. And again, while her base normal damage isn't the craziest, this also does really gas up her NP gain on her arts card specifically. But then, if she wasn't kind of a weird pseudo support already, whenever she attacks with her arts cards, she raises the party's attack by 5% for 3 turns. So again, not only increasing her own attack, but also, again, if you're going to use this kind of future idea of maybe using her with Yui for, I guess, more of just a more like fun setup or something along those lines, you're tired of doing just the double Castoria thing, it's not bad, because she's also providing attack for the entire party while kind of just doing her own thing and attacking normally. It does leave her in a bit of a weird scenario, though, that if you are going to bring her to a stage where you want to use, say, her face cards like against a boss enemy, it does make you maybe want to use her arts cards before her NP, kind of like Hokusai, to boost the damage of your NP. which I don't like too much in challenge quest or like advanced quest, stuff along those lines, because it means that you can't recover that extra follow-up NP after firing it. You know, I prefer to use my arts cards afterwards, but sometimes you want that extra damage. Where this is really good though is in farming, because anytime you see an arts card, you slap that before she fires her NP, that's free bonus damage that you just have for the rest of the stage, which is rather nice. And over the course of a free quest farm, you know, that you're doing on 3 turns, you should run into both of your arts cards over the course of that. Now, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get both of them on turn 1, but you might find one on turn 2, one on turn 3, and that's still fine. You know, that's when the nodes are starting to get a little bit more difficult, and she could get that little bit of an extra damage buff, and it's just nice. Finally, there's her NP, and she's got 2, yes, count them, 2 power mods that are both pretty decent, although I kind of wish she probably had the 150% power mod on Demonic and the 30% on Evil Alignment, but I will take it because, frankly, these are both pretty decent power mods. While she's also dropping, again, probably drizzling 8 stars onto the field, that's just kind of nice. Again, when someone like Proto Merlin comes out, having 8 stars in addition to her genning stars every single turn, especially with 20-30, it'll probably be enough for her to be able to do good, consistent crits. And to be fair, there's not a lack of targets when going into the Evil Alignment. I mean, most of the normal enemies that aren't servants, you know, are probably going to be bosses, like, say, Kiara, the Columbus Egg, things like Kama, Koyenskaya, but there are some that you could run into, like the Kali from Lost Belt 4. I suppose if they ever wanted to use the Lamu as random free quest enemies, you could use her for that, I guess, but they pretty much only appear, I think, in Babylonia, because, yeah, I think we'd all remember if the Lamu just randomly popped up in, like, a Valentine's event or something. As an aside, that'd be really messed up. You put the Siduri Lamu in the middle of, like, a Valentine's event, dude, that would be just the fate thing that they would do, frankly. Now, Demonic, though, is the opposite, though, because there's not a whole lot of servants that have the Demonic tag. You know, it's kind of nice when you could take advantage of them whenever they just pop up, but there are quite a decent chunk of free quest enemies that you'll run into that have the Demonic tag. So when going into free quest farming, this will be very useful. And of course, there's also some boss fights that if you haven't completed them, you know, you'll be able to run in there with Bakin to beat them up. Not going to spoil any future bosses, but there are a couple of them on there that do have the Demonic tag, but there's also people like, say, Woodwose, the big Koyenskaya, who I think you do also get to fight again in Tunguska Sanctuary if you haven't done that. If you haven't beaten up the giant furball, you can also use her for that, I suppose, but there probably is a better servant to use for that one. But hey, hear me out. She's got debuff immunity of 1 time. Maybe she's cracked for that fight. But all in all, you know, point is, and, you know, no meme, she is a very strong servant. I really do like how Bakin is designed, because she has all the basic essentials you would want somebody to have, and then some. Then she gets some extra bits of utility, and is designed in a way just how I like my servants to be designed. You know, there's really no flaws that I could see in the unit, you know, in the fact that, yeah, her base damage could be a little bit low and her NP gain could be a little bit low, but practically you're going to be using her mostly against casters because she is a rider, and that does shore up her NP gain deficiencies. And her damage might not be super crazy initially, gets fixed when you start taking into all of the accounts of the stuff that she's able to do. Finding 2 arts cards or firing them off, you know, she does get rather strong. Like, she gets up to a pretty respectable level. You're fighting a demonic enemy, okay, then she has just very, very solid damage. It's Evil Alignment, her damage is actually really good. Then you just start taking into account things like, okay, we've stacked up a couple of arts attacks, and then we've also got someone we have power mod on, or we have both of our power mods on, you know, then she starts to be looking really, really good, you know. And considering that Demonic and Evil Alignment have a little bit of overlap, because, no duh, I think most demonic things are probably going to be set as evil. Unfortunately, not a lot of the random free quest enemies also get that. It's mostly going to be relegated to bosses, but then you're fighting a boss, you want to have that really high damage. So then I think it does kind of work out for her. Now, she's not perfect. I'm more just saying in the way that if we were to get a buff for Bakin, I really wouldn't know what they were going to be giving her, because her kit is already rather solid as is. Maybe like an NP buff, so her base damages get raised a little bit. Up the stars, maybe to 15 whenever she bombs the stars on her NP. I don't know, you could check her like a NP gain buff or something on it, kind of like Melusin. I don't know, you can let me know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.